All right, let me go ahead and clean up some of the stuff here. Go to edge, double click this guy, control backspace. So we've got our offset edge loop next. And that's gonna just give us this kind of a thing. I think you might have to grab a complete edge loop. Yeah, there we go. So it didn't like this one because there's this weird intersection up here and it wasn't sure what to do. But in this case, you can go ahead and just add sort of like a bevel, but it keeps the original edge. So that is offset edge loop. And then we're not going to worry about that. Quad draw is its own big thing we'll talk about later. Slide edge. So we'll go ahead and grab these, and then I can grab my middle mouse button to drag those around. That can be very useful. And then target weld is basically like if you want to drag one edge to another, it'll go ahead and weld it. And this also works for verts, like so. All right, so that will cover what I need to talk about regarding mesh tools. You'll find a lot of that same stuff here in the modeling toolkit. There's some sort of important functionality over here called quad draw, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. That's it's for retopology and it is useful. But yeah, you can see like there's extrude and bridge and bevel and add divisions and boolean and separate and combine, whatever, all the kind of stuff that we've already talked about. They just sort of reorganize it. I don't think that there's any additional, like with the connect here, I'm not even sure which one that is. Right, so that looks like that is going to be the Mesh Tools version of Connect because it's giving me this option to slide stuff around. All right, I'm going to just click on my little pointer here to get out of that tool. When you have a tool selected, it'll show up right here in your UI. So now what I want to talk about is Mesh Display. Let me go ahead and see if I can just increase this so that it doesn't behave oddly or look strange. So we'll go Mesh Tools. And then crease tool, and I'll drag that to all the way to the left, which will set it to crease value to 0. All right, so right now, if I deselect the geometry and I disable wireframe on shaded, we can still very clearly see the difference here between these two faces. We get a very sharp edge with the lighting, right? So that means that these edges, there are vertices that make up this boundary here, but the verts are actually a little bit more complicated than a simple point. Each vert has the ability, basically for each incoming edge on the vert, there is a normal. Just like we talked about for the face normals, the verts also have normals. And just to make this a little bit easier, we can go ahead and go to polygons and then vertex normals. And here you can see this right here, these three normals are all associated with this one vertex. So this scenario here where we have all the verts for vertex, sorry, all the normals for vertex pointing in different directions, that's called basically like each edge is hardened. We can set these all to be smoothed, and what that will do is it'll take all of these vertex normals and basically average them out so they're all in the same position. And we do that by going to Mesh Display. So I'm just going to go ahead and tear off Mesh Display. So this is all mostly messing with stuff with either vertex color or with messing with the normals. So I'm going to go ahead and set this to Soften Edge. And you can see it took all of those verts, the vert normals, and it made them essentially whatever the word for vectors that are all in the same direction. It's not really collinear, coplanar, maybe it's those things, but they're all pointing in the average for where what the input vectors were. And you can see now with the lighting, it's very, very soft. We no longer have all those edges. And in fact, if I deselect it, I mean, it's still a pretty basic shape, but you can see what's going on here. Everything is very smooth and squishy. So it's important to set this stuff up properly for what's a process called baking. And that's going to be important down the road. So for now, what you need to kind of understand is that the way that the surface is being lit is directly a result of what's going on with the vertex normal. So if I want, I can go to harden, and you can see everybody here is now pointing in different directions. So that is vertex smoothing and or harden edge and soften edge, and they're sort of edge oriented here, but really what's going on is it's more with the verts. So you can also ask it to average out. I think in this case, because all of the angles are basically 90 degrees, everything is going to be, it's not going to look any different. Everything is going to be hardened. So let's see, you can also set them to face. Again, that's not going to look any different here, but that basically just sets the vert normals to be aligned with whatever the face normal is. So we can hit set to face, and obviously nothing changes. I may go and grab some more complex geometry that kind of demonstrates. In fact, let me do that real quick. All right, so this is a slightly more complicated mesh. I'm going to go ahead and hide the grid. We'll just go display grid, and you can see if I deselect it, each face here has it's all faceted, right? That's kind of the term that we use. You can see every single face. Whereas if I come over and I say soften edges, you can see everything is now nice and soft. And this is very, very important, as I mentioned earlier, for baking. Just very quickly, baking is a process where you have a high poly mesh that might have millions of polygons, and then you would have a low poly mesh like this, which just has I don't know, maybe 1,000 or 2,000. You can actually show that if we go to display, heads up display, and then poly count. This has 4,700 triangles. Triangles are kind of the important one. You can also get faces, but that's not really a number that is as important as triangles. Anyway, so what you would do is there's a way to sort of capture the difference in the surface where you've got a high poly and a low poly, and that is captured in the form of several images that are interpreted by a video card to basically fake the lighting and add color and make some areas shiny and other areas dull, or make something feel like it's made out of metal or whatever. But that is a topic for another day. I just kind of want to give you an idea for what this stuff is really doing here. So you can reverse the face normals, and that's going to basically point them all inside. So if your geometry ever looks really dark and weird, just try reversing the face normals, and that might solve the problem. Averages, and let me go ahead and turn these back on. We'll go to display and polygons and face normals, or actually, well, it doesn't really matter, but we'll start with vertex normals. Cool. Okay, so they're a little on the small side because this geometry is a little bit larger. So I'm just going to hop over to my channel box. We'll go to scale and just reduce it to something like this. Maybe that's too much. We'll try 0.5. I mostly just want to avoid having to go in and play with the normal size. It's actually not very difficult, but whatever, maybe 0.25. Okay, that's good. So now we can see what's going on. And as I mentioned earlier, because I just smoothed everything, all of the vertex normals appear to have just a single normal associated with them. But if I go to harden edge, then we can see they all separate apart. And we get all of our individual vertex normals. And each incoming edge generates its own normal. So you can see this vertex here has 4 incoming edges, and so we have 4 associated vertex normals. Okay, so that's the soften edge, harden edge, and then there's one that basically just averages, and you can tell it my threshold here. So if the faces are, I don't know, more than 30 degrees, it'll harden them. Otherwise, it'll make them soft. So if I hit apply here, we can see we're getting sort of a random assortment of edges being hard and softened based on that threshold value of 30. It's not really exactly what I'm super worried about right now. With an organic form, you would expect this. With something that's a little bit more regular, like a hard surface geometry, you might get a better result. Let's see, lock normals. That's basically just going to make it so you can't mess with them, lock and unlock. So if you're ever playing with the normals and you're not seeing a big change, just double check that they don't need to be unlocked first. So vertex normal edit tool, that's probably something where you could get in and individually mess with them. But I have never needed to do this. I'm always just very happy to either soften everything or strategically harden based on the criteria required for my baking process. All right, let's see. So we can very quickly talk about applying vertex color because it's super duper easy. So I'm just going to open this up. Let's see, apply color. So you can pick whatever color you want, and then pick whatever components you want to apply the color to, and then you just hit apply, and then you can make things various colors. And what's happening here is it's actually applying that color to the vertex. Actually, I don't know, it might be in this case faces. Normally I think about polygonal color operations as being associated with the verts, but it looks like it's not having any trouble applying these. Yeah, that's what happens when you start doing it with the verts, is you get this blending. That's kind of what I was looking for there. So if for some reason you don't see when you try to apply colors, to your geometry, just go to the attribute editor, and in this case I've got the shape selected. You can see we've got this is going to be the transform, and this is basically determining where in space this thing is sitting, and the shape is going to have some more information about how the geometry is set up. And so you've got this mesh component display here, and you can just go down to display colors and turn it off and turn it on, and you should see your colors showing up. Okay, so that probably wraps it up for the mesh display section and the polygon modeling tools in general. So in the next video I'm going to do a little demonstration and show you how we can apply these tools to actually create something new and interesting.